we decided to look into the anxieties that are experienced by our moms during this COVID-19 situation. And the reason why we picked our moms is because, well, the circuit breaker, we aren't exactly allowed to go around and ask anybody anything else. So we gave them 8 questions, but generally, the main 2 driving questions that we were looking for getting answers to were, number 1, looking at how private troubles are connected to larger issues. So we are looking at how the policies on the prevention and or disruption of the economy of movement, as seen in the circuit breaker, has affected our moms personally. And secondly, we also want to look at the ways in which they make sense of this crisis, how they are learning to navigate or to cope with it. So considering the changes in policies as a result of COVID-19, what with the new laws and restrictions, while this is necessary, I think many of us are required to reroute how we would normally do things. So the ease of movement and the availability of transnational exchange in our personal lives is something that we don't really think about in Singapore regularly. And so how have these changes in their daily lives created new anxieties, private troubles, and how are they learning to navigate this crisis? So that's like the crux of what we are trying to find. And so for our interviews, we asked them to draw out what they are experiencing. Like while they share what they are experiencing to us verbally, we also wanted them to draw how they feel. And then we asked them to share what the drawings meant. And although there is a common source of their troubles in each of their stories, there are also differences in how the situation affects them. But there are also a similarity in how they chose to cope with the situation.
Okay, so in my case, right? So for my mom, she feels very disorientated by the disruption of her physical routines, and she finds it very frustrating that she's unable to physically go out. So to her, everything is like boxed away from her, and she feels like this trapped bird at the top of the screen, whereas real birds outside are kind of like mocking her, like, haha, I'm still free. Yeah, and as a teacher, she now has to also move to Zoom, which she hates because she worries a lot about technology usage and internet breakdown as a, I guess, more senior teacher. But she also holds like some worries for students who have difficulty accessing online material and have more trouble with independent learning. She says that although it's necessary for now, right, she feels that how can it replace face-to-face interaction? She doesn't like Zoom meetings because they are very isolating. And when everyone is at home using the internet together, sometimes the internet is slow and not very practical. And when everyone is at home together, they're kind of like bouncing around, and there's a lot of tension at times. Yeah. Okay, then this is Beth's mom's drawing.
So for my mom, she's actually the sole breadwinner of my family, and a lot of her anxieties revolve around like the economic disaster that she believes this virus is bringing about. Because my mom owns a small business, and the nature of her business is considered non-essential, so she's not able to go to work. And also the nature of her business actually makes it impossible to go online. So she's unable to actually work during this time, and she also worries about the future because of this, because none of me and my siblings are working yet. So she also mentioned that she never imagined how she would be inconvenienced by the circuit breaker. She never really recognized the convenience or the freedom of movement that she had, or the fact that she didn't need to rely on the internet as like a medium to do her business. So the anxieties and worries that she feels now is really a result of how she has lived pre-COVID-19, and thus it has created like the conditions that shape how she feels now, since these liberties have been taken away. Okay, so for our group, we decided to look.
Okay, then it would be Joell.
So for my mom, she didn't actually draw like specific images to talk about how she felt, but she shared with me that she doesn't really have like personal anxieties and concerns as of now. My mom is a homemaker, so her daily schedule pretty much revolves around like family, and friends have to be kept in touch with remotely. So while she doesn't have personal anxieties and concerns, she does wonder how things will be impacted on a national and a global scale after the pandemic is over, and whether we will go back to business as usual and forget about the vulnerabilities of some of the demographics in Singapore now. So a second question that we got from this exercise was how are ways in which our moms have made sense of this crisis, and then how are they personally learning how to cope and navigate. So one thing that we found was a commonality was their faith and religion, and turning to a higher being and using that as a sort of compass to make sense of their situation. So for Kristen's mom, she yes, so she actually wrote that like she copes by praying and spending time with God. And then for Beth's mom, she drew a cross, and then that is God anchoring her while she flies, I guess. So it's, and she prays as well, like there's prayer in her heart. And then she wrote like my faith anchors my soul. And then for my mom, she drew a pair of hands like praying. So what we found was that the similarity in our mom's responses reflect in some small way the universality of the human condition, in which there's a need to tether yourself to something bigger to make sense of what you're going through. So often this is bigger than the big troubles that we are facing, and is most commonly manifested in belief systems and faith. So for our moms, individually, their faith in God is something that allows them to assuage their doubts and allay their fears and put whatever they're going through in perspective. So drawing strength from faith and fellow believers in this time and in every situation helps them to make sense of the crisis.